We often see videos talking about the end of the dollar, but how accurate are these videos in this message? Will it be as sudden as they suggest? I see a lot of doom and gloom videos regarding the death of the dollar, but they leave out a lot of key points. I'll get into those today. Hey everyone, welcome to Campbell's Coins. There's a lot of valid talk about the consequences of de-dollarization and what this could look like in the Western world. What many fail to mention, though, is the likelihood of de-dollarization or a timeline. A lot of folks on here say it will happen any day now, but if you scroll through the history of their videos, you'll see the same message repeating over and over and over again. Any day now. Some of these have been saying it for at least a decade. It's similar to scientists saying the sun will explode and the consequences for the beings on Earth. And they keep pumping that message so you're really scared and they say, you need to buy a sun shelter to protect yourself from the solar explosion. I'm being extremely facetious, but you get the point. When a timeline is left out of this fear message, they can say it will happen at any moment. It's true. The sun will turn into a red giant and engulf the Earth in millions of miles beyond our orbit, and then shrink down into a white dwarf or a planetary nebula, but this isn't expected to happen for 5 billion years. When the dollar finally collapses or is removed as the world's reserve currency, the geniuses pumping the death of the dollar message will just claim they've been saying it all this time.
I've been saying it. I've been saying it for 10 damn years. Ain't I been saying it, Miguel? Huh? I've been saying it.
Throw enough crap against the wall, eventually something will stick. Now, what about the US dollar? Is it doomed to collapse, as so many YouTubers say? If we were to go off past world reserve currency performances, the answer is yes. The average lifespan for a world reserve currency is about 100 years. It's even less for non-world reserve currencies, which is around 27 years. Here's a graph of world reserve currencies since 1450. Each of these was the dominant currency at some point in time. You can see there seems to be a repeating pattern here. A currency's dominance begins and it ends, and the cycle tends to start and end with a big war. So in the history of fiat currency, we can see all fiat currency fails. If all fiat currency fails, and the typical life cycle of a world reserve currency averages around 100 years, and the dollar is over 100 years old, logic would dictate the US dollar is past its time and is nearing its end. A BRICS currency has been talked about heavily for the last few years and how it will upend the dollar. Could this happen? Never say never, but let's look at some stats. The BRICS nations, including its recent additions, only accounts for 24% of the world's GDP. The US, on the other hand, accounts for around 25% of the world's GDP and has averaged around 28% over the last 60 years. In 1960, the US was 40% of the world's GDP, while China was 4%. Today, the US is 24% and China is 16%, respectively. Out of all the nations in BRICS, China is the economic powerhouse in this group with 66% of total GDP. Many channels point out BRICS will challenge and dethrone the dollar. Given the rapid growth of BRICS and its combined GDP, soon to exceed that of the United States, I'm still taking the stance that I don't think the dollar will be dethroned anytime soon. Remember, you have a lot of countries who are in this BRICS group, and all of these nations need to agree to things. These nations are not exactly the most stable either. And you think all of these nations will agree to everything all the time between one another, especially when some have bad blood? Now, I do find it concerning a collective of nations have gotten over their differences enough to band together to create BRICS. Yes, I think that speaks volumes to what they have had to deal with concerning the US and the dollar. I just think it will be difficult to get all these nations to agree when they are all working for and looking out for their own interests. You have to take into account the economic health of these countries as well. China, like many others, have not been doing that great, and they account for 66% GDP of this group. I could break down the economic issues within each of these countries in BRICS, but you're going to see the same trend that you do with China. The dollar has strength this year on the back of a higher yield. Despite lower inflation, higher interest rates, and a strong dollar, gold has held up somewhat well. Gold has been on a downward trend over the last week. The dollar has dropped significantly in value since its inception in 1913, about 96%. While it has dropped in value through inflation, the dollar is still the world's reserve currency. Ray Dalio used to say that cash is trash. He has now temporarily reversed this thinking and has stated that cash is okay for now. Given all these threats to the dollar, BRICS, inflation, etc., why don't I see de-dollarization happening anytime soon? Nearly everything is priced in dollars. Items must be purchased using dollars. 50 to 80% of international trade is invoiced in dollars, and 70% of the world's currencies are anchored in some degree to the dollar. When a currency is this deeply rooted, it is not likely an overnight switch will happen. Do you think the United States is going to give up that control and power overnight? I really don't think so. So how much longer will the dollar be the world's reserve currency? No one knows for sure, but its time is ticking. Folks have been saying for the last 50 years, it's the end of the dollar. Just do some quick Googling, you'll see the articles. Heck, do some quick searching here on YouTube, and you can see it going back many, many years. There is nothing new. I definitely don't see the dollar ending tomorrow or this year. Its tentacles are in everything and everywhere, and it will be very difficult to switch over to something entirely new that the world suddenly trusts as much as it does dollars. Many YouTubers reference how quickly certain currencies hyperinflate, and those countries' economies just went under. One major point they conveniently leave out, because it doesn't fit well into their doom and gloom narrative, is none of these currencies in the last 100 years were world reserve currencies. Weimar Germany, that currency collapsed right after World War I. Zimbabwe's currency collapsed in the 90s, I think. Venezuela's currency fell most recently. Not a single one of these currencies is or was important to the function of the world. Now, I'm not trying to be some arrogant American. I'm just stating the reality of things. World reserve currencies have and do fail, but it's a very long death rattle. It's not something that will happen overnight, as some suggest. They are taking a minor currency and applying the same logic to the dollar. The dollar might fail in the same way due to overprinting, but the world's reserve currency takes a lot longer to die. There's usually a massive war fought before a world reserve currency goes away. The US dollar is deeper than any fiat world reserve currency before it. The dollar is like an invasive weed with deep roots affecting and reaching everything. Obviously, I am not saying things are great with the world economy or the US economy or even the American dollar, but these faux economic prognosticators have been hitting that fear button extra hard in the last 10 years. A lot of channels prey on your fears and ignorance to pump a message and add to their bottom line. Sometimes they don't even understand what they're saying, but a majority know they aren't comparing apples to apples. But I guess anything to get those views, right? What would I do to prepare for de-dollarization? If you're a regular viewer of my channel, you know my answer. Gold. I love gold. It offers so much to me beyond its intrinsic value. Its insurance, its untaxable wealth, which can be passed from generation to generation. But most importantly, out of all the reasons to own gold, its absolute freedom outside the system. The dollar is the world's reserve currency. It will not go away anytime soon without something catastrophic happening. but that does not take away from the fact the US is printing it into oblivion. Eventually, things will get to a breaking point, and when that day comes, I'll be happy with my gold. Your time is your most precious asset, and I appreciate you spending it here with me. Thank you all for watching. This is Campbell's Coins, and that is my 2 cents.